My customers often tease me about the frequency that I use the terms adding interest and dimension. But in reality, I only use a few materials. So I need to make the most of them, either by bending, folding, hammering, texturing, or flame coloring. So here I have just a simple piece of copper. I'm going to do a couple leaves, and let's see what we can do to take this plain piece of copper and turn it into something so that it has interest and dimension.
This is a piece of 16-ounce copper and a pattern that I use for many of my leaves, and a copper blank. And I cut these out using aviation snips. I'm going to fold this leaf in half, just using this seaming tool. Now, many of the sprays that I've done have been with this particular leaf, just folded as I folded it right here. You can see it has some dimension, more interesting than the copper blank there. And now for this particular leaf, I'm going to anneal it, heating it up until it is red hot, and then allowing it to air cool. This is a pine 2x4, and I heated some rods up till they were red hot, and then pressed them down into the 2x4, made these grooves. I can use some type of instrument here. What I'm going to use right here is a piece of 1/8 inch hot rolled steel. Hammering it right down into that groove. And you can see from the back side, makes an indentation there. And of course, that hammering stiffened that copper up considerably. I annealed the leaf once more, so it's very soft. Now I'm using a piece of 1/8 inch rod, hammering right down into that groove. And when you turn that over, you can see that the groove is deeper. Here's the other leaf that I cut out. And for this one, I used the break so that I could get a sharper crease right in the middle. And then I flattened it. Just put that 2x4 on it and just hammered it right down so it is flat. And now I'll anneal it, getting it red hot and then letting it cool. And now that it's cool, I'm going to use this little anvil, and you can see that I have a chisel that I've made, welded onto a handle. Just using that chisel, And as I strike, I'm pulling towards me. This will stretch the copper. I can't do this too long before it needs to be annealed again, or one of those chisel marks will just cut right through the copper. Using the torch to anneal the leaf once more. I'll just go ahead and use the chisel while the copper is hot. Holding it here with the needle nose. Same thing. When I strike with the chisel, I'm pulling the chisel towards me. And that's stretching the copper. With all those chisel marks, this copper is stiff. And to go on to the next step, I'll need to anneal it once more. While that's cooling, this is just a chisel that I made and tempered, put onto that handle. But if you don't have something like that, you can use a mason's hammer. It has a edge on it just like a chisel. You can find these at any hardware store or builder's supply. The copper's cool. I'm going to use this knife, get in here and see if I can pry this open. It's kind of like prying open a clam. Now, that's what I call interest and dimension. But it's even going to get better once it's wire brushed. Now this is the first leaf that I did with that edge where I used the 2x4. And you can see it's cleaned up on the wire brush. And now if I just twist it, it adds even more dimension. You can see this looks even better once it has been wire brushed. There's just so much form. This leaf has a lot of possibilities and a lot of different sculptures. By using a standard piece of 16-ounce copper, using a pattern, cutting out the blanks, and then forming the copper. And this is just a small example of what can be done to add interest and dimension.